think about the stories that shape our understanding of the world. Increasingly, these stories are illuminating the lived experiences of individuals facing Alzheimer's. From poignant memoirs that crack open the personal realities to moving documentaries that offer a window into the lives and even narratives woven into popular television. Our collective consciousness is shifting. We're seeing more and hearing more and hopefully understanding more about the complex human experience. Today, we're diving deeper into this vital conversation. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I'm your host, Jen Fink. Back with me today is Carlos Olivas. He was on, goodness gracious, I'll have to link it because I think it was back in September of 23. Time flies when you're having fun. He is back today to talk to us about his participation in the movie A Matter of Mind, My Alzheimer's. And A Matter of Mind is the 3rd film in the series which explores neurodivergent diseases. Matter of Mind, My Alzheimer's is an intimate portrayal of 3 families confronting the unique challenges of Alzheimer's and how this progressive neurodegenerative disease transforms roles and relationships. Whether it's a partner becoming a caregiver or an adult child shifting into being their parent's caregiver, these stories show how families evolve when a loved one is diagnosed. And the other film in the series is Matter of Mind's My ALS and Matter of Mind, My Parkinson's. So thanks for joining me again, Carlos. And Dad's in the background. Hi, Dad. We have a cameo from the star himself.
Cameo appearance. He's about to head out to get him some food for this morning, get him some nourishment, some exercise, some socialization, and practice life in his own way. And that's the core of his presence right now. He's engaged, he is cared for, and he continues to thrive with himself. And it makes it a little bit easier because I don't have to be the entertainment director, the chauffeur, and the clown jester. He is active with humor, laughter, the joys that are more prevalent than the decline.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Because I hear a lot of stories about other people's loved ones and how fast they decline and how fast they lose their abilities to be present, to continue their quality of life, and to uphold their dignity. Dad, I'm fortunate that we found something early on that works, and we've been able to repeat it on a loop, much like the philosophy or the psychology of repetitive questions and things like that. My dad, he responds well. He responds well to positive environment that he can kind of embrace in his own way. Be it drawing all day long, listening to music, bopping his little feet together, and applying strokes to the paper and creating masterpieces.
Now, for those who don't know, Carlos's dad, Carlos the second, you're the third, right?
Yeah. I identify as the third, but technically I am a junior as well.
Okay.
I know it's complicated.
Yeah, I was gonna say my dad was a junior. That's as far as that went. And it wasn't until after he died that I learned, well, I learned after my dad died that after his dad died, he was technically no longer a junior, which I thought was kind of weird, but I get it, but it's still weird. But he, Carlos's dad, Carlos, is a prolific artist, and he wasn't necessarily an artist before, but he did drafting
So
for.
he's always been an artist in his own. So he's cracking me up with himself right now. He's being a jokester. You want to show people on camera what you look like right now? You want to show people on camera what you look like?
Is that a glass over his eye?
That's a little cup for his medications.
Oh, okay.
So he's just ingested his medications, and he
Wearing the cup
took a
like mom did.
Sharpie. Yeah. So yeah, he's handsome fellow, right? Handsome.
Definitely.
Yes.
Was he always a jokester like this, well, outgoing and
Yeah, he's always been that funny person. Um, as far as you know, from as far as I can remember. Um, there is a lot of pictures and stuff of him being a clown beforehand, and he's always been this ham. If anything, he's been the happy person that he is today.
well, thankfully Alzheimer's didn't change it because I know for some people their personalities change. I think that's more FTD, but I've heard it with Alzheimer's. And I'm in the same boat as you. My mom had a long progression with her disease. So I don't know what's worse, living with it for 20 plus years or it just going really fast to where you like can't even catch your breath. Hopefully I don't have to experience the other side because once was enough. Actually, well, for me, it was more than once because my grandmother had vascular dementia and she and my mom overlapped. So that was joyful fun. So,
Mm.
how did you guys become these stars of this movie, which I happened to see? It is available online, which I will link. It's beautifully told, beautifully, for anybody that might be a new listener or hasn't paid attention. I'm a retired portrait photographer, so visualization, how things look is really important to me. Um, so it was a beautiful movie and it was like an hour. So it wasn't like, considering there's three families in the whole movie, it wasn't long and drawn out. It didn't leave you feeling, you know, depressed or, ugh, just, it was kind of uplifting. So how did you guys, you know, end up with this film crew following you around? Because I did get to experience that a little bit when we did State Advocacy Day in 23, right? Or was that
Yeah,
20? Okay.
2023.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. Um, um, it all began with a email saying that they were interested in doing an interview with me because of a blog they saw on the Alzheimer's Association's site. So I did a couple of interviews with the producers, and that led to them picking us as one of the three families in this film. Um, I shared what was going on at the time, and I was right in the middle of grieving the loss of my brother
Mhm.
and navigating how to how to grieve without my dad,
Yeah.
how to grieve without him knowing that my brother's gone and causing more of a traumatic situation. there's, I listen to the dementia practitioners and the other caregivers that coached me and telling me not to tell him ever again. Once is enough. But I ended up not learning my lesson until the fourth time. And the fourth time was the worst.
Ooh.
And that was enough. That was enough. But he also, I feel, he got a sense of closure. But we don't
You
really
heard
know.
4 times?
Um, the fourth time was the day of my brother's celebration of life.
Ah,
So he was surrounded by family, music, um, good food, and reflection.
kind of hard to hide what's going on then.
Yeah, I want to believe that my dad got some closure that day, that he was surrounded by supportive members of our community. But we really don't know.
That's true.
I just don't want him to relive it over again. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to get punched in the gut daily
No.
trying to remember that your son is gone.
And I learned from my aunt's experience. My grandmother, she took care of my grandmother, and my grandmother got very upset and agitated this one particular day and was convinced that my grandfather had left her for another woman, which that's already hard enough to cope with. And my aunt not having the benefit of the knowledge that we have now, because my grandmother passed away in 2012. So there's a lot more knowledge going between 2012 and now. And, she started she had vascular dementia in like the mid, I think it was 97. Sounds about right. And she's like, no, 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 mom. Dad didn't leave you for another woman. Dad died. My grandmother lost it. It was, and maybe telling her he left her for another woman would have been less painful. I don't know. But yeah, I heard that story and I was like, okay. And my mom repeatedly would always ask. So for people who don't remember, maybe Carlos doesn't remember. My mom thought I was her best friend, which kind of an upgrade. And she would always fuss about, does my husband know where we're going? And it was always kind of that snarky tone of voice, which drove me bananas. It took a little while for me to stop saying, yes, mom, dad knows where we're going, because that didn't answer her question. And I couldn't get her centered into that reality. So I finally just started saying, oh, yeah, I saw him at Rotary, or yeah, he's having lunch with such and such friend, or, whatever answer was like what would have been logical had he still been living. And then there was one day, and I don't know if you've experienced this in the car. You're a parent, so you've had a lot of opportunity where all of a sudden you're driving and they just hit you with that, is Santa real? Or we were thankfully at a stoplight. My mom started talking about how it was really sad that my dad died. I was so relieved that we were stopped in the car and she talked about him for like 2 minutes. And then she went, oh, the sky is so pretty with the clouds. And that was it. One time in 3 years, she acknowledged that he was gone. So yeah, I never reminded her he was dead. So I think your dad probably got closure, because I think somewhere inside, like emotionally, they know. They just can't put all those pieces back together.
Yeah. There was one time in the film that he's talking about my brother, and he says, "Oh, he's up in the mountains."
I remember that.
And I felt that was a sign that he knows that he's somewhere at a higher elevation. Um, the other day he asked, "Have you talked to your brother?" And I just said, "Yeah, he's in the North Carolina with NASCAR, having fun, and he's safe." And that was it. That brought him some comfort that everything was fine in the world. And I think he mirrors my confidence in knowing that my brother is safe. And technically, I'm not lying to him.
True.
My brother is safe. He's probably having fun. Um, and if North Carolina's heaven, then it is what it is.
Hey, I'm sure there's lots of people that think North Carolina's heaven. Haven't been there, so can't attest to its beauty, but I've heard it's a beautiful state. So,
Yeah.
so you did some interviews with the producers, and what was the next step? And then did you know that they were talking to you about doing a movie at that point? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, they talked about the possibility of being interviewed for this film and having a crew come over and sit with Dad and kind of follow us around. And I was hesitant because do I let people in to our world in the middle of this chaos that I was going through and show off my dad, show off the artist that he is, engaging with all the art that he is associated with in his house, somewhere that he feels comfortable, confident, and very familiar with.
Yeah, you
And
must buy
my dad,
Sharpies in bulk, right?
yeah, we buy Sharpies in bulk right now. And that's the challenge because Costco got rid of their little bundle of Sharpies that they had for a very affordable price, and now I have to seek out other sources. But we invited these people to come in, and Dad just shined. He was able to communicate and express himself and be Dad. He is that humorous, wise man that I've known all my life. It's just me going through the phases of grief,
Right.
mourning my brother, in the middle of it all, while supporting my dad living with a neurodegenerative disease. And I'm I still have to pinch myself because the journey has been long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning as I go. I'm not perfect. Um, it's very uncertain,
That is for sure.
and and I am doing the best I can, trying to navigate my own affairs, plus my dad's, and all the other obstacles and hurdles that I have to jump through, or over, or under.
Yeah, or all of the above.
It's tough,
I
but
don't
I've
think.
developed this mindset,
Mhm.
to you know, prioritize me first because if I can't take care of me, then I can't take care of Dad.
And that emphasizes kind of how I feel, and I kind of feel like the movie kind of highlighted maybe indirectly is that when you are caring for somebody with this kind of disease, it is like living life for two people because you have to do all the stuff, you know, cooking, cleaning, working, finances, all that stuff, all that adulting for yourself, but you also have to do it for your dad. And I had to do it for my mom, even though my mom was in memory care the last 3 years. That did not, it lessened the day to day responsibilities, but it certainly did not change the fact that I was in charge of her care. I was the captain of her care team. They would call me up and tell me, your mama needs new shoes, and be like, oh, great. Now I got to take her to Penny's or whatever. Ooh, you know, and it was, that was good because I never thought about looking at the bottoms of my mom's shoes. And she was literally wearing a hole in them. I'm like, okay, can't really argue with that one. We're going to Penny's. And I couldn't just buy shoes and take them to her because she did not recognize new things as hers. So she would give them away. So this particular trip for shoes, I found shoes that she thought were comfortable, that were very, very similar to the ones that were dead. And we paid for them. I had the cashier cut tag off the shoes, put her old shoes in the box. I put the new shoes on her feet, threw the box in the trunk, like out of sight, out of mind. I do not want this woman giving away these $60 pair of slip-on shoes. Like, I couldn't even be frugal because I had to get something that she would not interpret as not hers. That's you don't even have to do that with toddlers. They either like them and wear them, or they like them and don't wear them. It's a whole different aspect of living. And that's one thing that I really liked about the movie is it really showed three different stories. And I think it's Janice, right? The gal from New York. She's going to be on. We're doing an episode with her, so she'll be on later. So you get to hear two of the three family stories. So how long did the film crew follow you around? Wasn't it the better part of a year?
It was several months, different parts of the year, 2 to 3 days each visit.
Mm.
So we were, as soon as like 9 o'clock rolled around, they were in the house getting prepped up, or following me into Dad's bedroom to wake him up, to get him to the doctor's appointment, or make breakfast, or a variety of different things, or even following me to tuck Dad into bed. Um, it was a lot. It was more than a job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was tiring because we not I wouldn't say we had to pause and wait. It was more just like, okay, we gotta set up the scene, and then kind of like just be ourselves.
It's like you have
And
to set up
doing
the scene for everyday stuff you do every day. That must have been kind of weird.
Well, there's some stuff that they just kind of jumped in and followed me around, but if they were doing like a spotlight, interviewing Dad, having him talk about his life, they kind of set it up and kind of created an environment for him to sit and be comfortable. And
That,
when they were interviewing both of us at the same time, we had these lights on us, and we were illuminated. And I was like, okay, it's like makeup. I was like, all right, how do we look?
so that's just like pretty normal to me. And I used to photograph weddings. And when digital came around and the photojournalists decided that, hey, they were going to jump in the wedding game, I would have brides in, the far flung suburbs of San Francisco come to me and go, I really like Carlos's way of doing these candids. It looks so great. And I'd have to look at them and go, I know, Carlos. Would you like me to tell you how much that costs? And would you like me to tell you how that works? Because what looks like candid, so in the film, it just looks like you guys were sitting there having a little chit chat. And I knew, one, because I can tell from the light, because I did photography for 30 years. So it's pretty ingrained. So I knew that you basically set up like almost like parameters for like a little, what's the right word? Like a little scene, like you said, for the action to take place in. So it's very controlled, but it's still candid, which most normal humans don't understand. It's a
Yeah.
photographer thing.
Yeah, once you frame it up and create this I guess portrait where we can kind of interact with. Um, it was just odd. I mean, for Dad, it was normal.
Well, that's good.
Dad should be on camera every day. I mean, we should have a camera crew following us around, doing everything with us, and Dad would probably enjoy it. Um,
It would be not. That would be nice. So there's a company out there called My Family History Film, and that's actually what they do. Not for days on. Well, they do for days on end. So they capture like a documentary in your life of a certain time, and they'll go back to uh, parts of your home country. They're in Europe. They're in the United Kingdom, so it's a little different over there. I don't think they would go to it, back home for us Americans, because that's a lot of travel. Maybe we would start over there with them. My family heritage is Scottish, so I could go over there and we could explore my life and my heritage. So there is a company out there that does that. I will actually link um their episode in the show notes because it was really interesting. It's not cheap, but it would be well worth it. And you've kind of experienced the similarity to what they would do. So that'd be cool. Um, do you have, and I know part of the production team is online. You guys can't see him. He's just listening. Do you have access to like the final film, like so you can archive it for your family, or you just have to hope it lives on indefinitely in the digital world?
That's a good question. I think there was a conversation that we as the featured talent would have access to the film. I just don't know the details. Um, so I probably have to follow up. I just don't know what the rights are that we have to the film because I would like to share it and see it over again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know it's going to live in cyber world, um, but I think after a month it's going to be you have to like rent it or pay per view, something like that. I just don't know the details exact. Um,
Well, now I just added something to your to-do list. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm not too concerned about that because I know it's going to be there for as long as PBS is still around. We're hoping that um, it continues the legacy of independent um, journalism and films and stuff with PBS. I just feel very grateful that we were chosen to share our story and give hope to a lot of the caregivers that are struggling, struggling to find out what Alzheimer's is, how to provide care for their loved one, and to live life as well as they can. It's very difficult to be a caregiver.
Yep.
It's not for everybody. And I've seen that up close and personal here at my house with my brother and my daughter and certain other family members who don't really understand what it is.
Yep. Not everybody's cut out to be a caregiver. And as hard as it is, I've talked to enough people who are one of multiple siblings, and there's like one that jumps in and takes care of everything, one that helps out, one that's kind of in and out, and one that's just like, I can't see dad that way. And they just pretty much fade into the background and, and that's okay. I don't really agree with the fourth option, but you can't force somebody to do this kind of role, this responsibility. So, um, what I liked about the film was so there was two adult children caring for a parent. So you're caring for your dad, the other gal is caring for her mom, and um, the last couple is a same-sex couple, and you got to see all sorts of different struggles, and it wasn't like typical TV where it's like, oh, after an hour, all the struggles and strife are all resolved. No, there was that was not the case because that's not the case in life. But it wasn't like you felt left like, oh, what happened? Maybe it's because I've been a caregiver and I talk to caregivers every day. I know what happens. I know what's happening, but to back up a little bit, why did you decide that you wanted to participate in this? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to share, my loved one like that. I don't know if your dad could actually legitimately consent. He probably consented because he's such a ham. But yeah, what was the deciding factor for sharing your lives and letting this mayhem and chaos into your world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I felt that there wasn't people out there that looked like me, a male caring for a male. being Latino, you know, close to as indigenous as possible, um, sharing our story, sharing the path that my dad's been on. My dad was in the Navy. He had a long-standing marriage with my mom. He raised two sons. Um, we were a typical all-American family. But things kind of fall off. Mom passed away from breast cancer and challenges with diabetes.
Mm.
My brother, he had a challenge, with alcoholism. And, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't really be a caregiver.
Mm-mm.
And that really impacted our trajectory. I asked my brother to come home to help out with dad so I can get some type of respite for me and we could share the burdens. In my own journey, I I was trying to navigate my own health, uh, improve my well-being, and take care of me.
Yeah, not anybody else out there doing that,
And that takes a lot. Like, who's taking care of the caregiver?
right?
Who is holding you accountable besides yourself? I started going to the doctor, taking care of my dental hygiene, which was really poor in the beginning. Like, I was suffering. I was having some serious challenges, and it took a financial loss for me. Well, loss. I just had to dump a lot of money to reinforce my oral care, and that's from what I now know now. It's highly important to take care of your teeth and your mouth so you don't get cardiovascular symptoms or even uh, dementia.
Yeah, the bacteria that's in your mouth, especially if you have teeth that are bad, that bacteria could actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And I don't think they knew that until somewhat recently. I've had 2 episodes with dentists, and one of them is hysterical because she deals with strictly older people. The other one was very informative, but it was a little gross, but important.
It can get gross. I mean, I could have really harmed myself if I didn't take care of me. And I'm grateful for the coaching that I received to really reflect on me.
And where did you
That
get
was
that coaching?
uh, there was a program through Hilarity for Charity that was partnered with the Rosalind Carter Institute of Caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Rosalind Carter is Jimmy Carter's wife who passed away. Uh, and then Jimmy Carter was one of our presidents.
Yeah,
And
I
she
remember
started,
him.
yeah, and
Barely.
she started this nonprofit and it focused on caregivers because of the challenges that uh, many of us face. So I was coached. I was given some knowledge to put me as the priority. Yeah, my dad's important. There's a lot of factors that I need him to be present in, but I need to take care of me so I can provide him a stable, comfortable environment for him to thrive in. And it shows. It shows in his smiles and his laughter, in his ability to participate in his daily activities. It's non-pharmaceutical intervention, and it's something that is not prescribed by a medical professional. It's just being present, uh, showing love, compassion, and empathy, a parent, to a loved one that that is not really kind of talked about. We don't discuss it in family gatherings or reunions or anything like that. We you know it's a part of our culture to have multi-generational families together housed in one place, but how do we communicate and show that there is a supportive approach to caring for our loved one, our elders,
Mhm.
in a way that uh, connects them to the family unit and also empowers them to have these instruments of dignity. So how do you learn about that?
Yeah.
Um, it's hands on. It's being there every day and riding that wave.
Yeah. It's not always a fun wave either.
No, it's not fun. There's times where I, um,
You go in your bathroom and you share your struggles on Instagram.
yeah, yeah, I share my struggles, but that's my outlet. I go to support groups, I attend educational workshops. I'm involved in uh, advocating, uh, and that's my way of releasing some of the strength that I have. I'm able to contribute to the community to spread awareness and educate about Alzheimer's and related dementias.
Which is important.
This it's highly important to be engaged in this situation because no one's really talking about it. I mean, you have your podcast about it, but it's not on the mainstream news.
Mm-mm.
It's not talked about it in the newspaper. There's several people on social media that are sharing their story. There's dementia coaches out there that are giving tips and tricks how to approach this. But the reality is there's not enough.
Mm-mm.
There's not enough coaches, dementia practitioners, or even medical professionals that understand what the Alzheimer's and dementias are.
I don't know if you caught it on Instagram. I have a past episode with two doctors, one a GP who teaches in medical school, does palliative and hospice care, and the other one is a geriatrician. And they wrote a book, and that was what our conversation was about. But I asked them, how much training do physicians get in medical school for, the various kinds of dementia? I don't think you're going to be surprised at what the answer was.
Yeah.
Just total zero. And these guys think our medical system is broken. That's what their book was about, which was kind of interesting for doctors to refer to our health care as sick care. And they have kids that are doctors and or are in medical school. Ugh, that's a tricky tongue twister there. So it's not like they're outside of the mainstream healthcare. So it was really kind of wild to hear some of their comments. But they did kind of excuse the lack of dementia training as we do have a lot to learn. And it took a lot to not say, yeah, no kidding. That's kind of the job requirement, in my humble opinion. So I would love to be like a trainer to go in and do like lunch and learns for medical offices, medical groups, and just help them understand like what it's like. When I took my mom to the doctor, oh Lord, that was we won't even get into that's a whole other episode. And how hard it is to take care of your dad and yourself. I mean, it's like I bet you there were times you felt like all you did was live at the doctor.
Yeah. There's times where I'm emailing the doctor all week long, asking about certain things, um, trying to figure out an approach, a strategy to certain symptoms or behaviors that are mind boggling. It's like, why is my dad doing this? Or why is he having these reactions when we've been having the same nutrition, diet, uh, and, activities, and he's just not feeling well.
I can answer that question for you. It's the disease. And disease affects your brain, and the brain is it's responsible for everything. It's
Yeah.
not the answer most people want to hear. That's what happens when you do a podcast for over 8 years, over 7 years, going on to 8, 400 episodes, somewhere around that number. I got to count, and I've talked to so many different people. I'm always amazed that like every week there's new people to talk to. You think I'd have run out of topics at this point, but we need to go back to the film. So you wanted to show someone like you, which definitely there are definitely fewer caregivers. I find, and I'm not good at math, but the fact that 2/3 of the people living with Alzheimer's are women, and most of the caregivers I deal with are women. I don't know how that fractions come together. Um, I think part of it is just it's society's expectations for gender roles. I do think it's biological. I mean, obviously, women are geared to be more nurturing because, kind of got to do that for a few months before you have a baby. But it's important, I actually like talking to men because it's a whole other perspective. But I'd have to count how many men caregivers are on my podcast versus women. It's definitely a fraction. So that was a good reason to be in the film. So I got to experience a little bit about your celebrity when we did the State Advocacy Day in 2023. The Alzheimer's Association chapters getting us all together for a photo. That was also the year that the normal place we have our harass the lawmakers. I mean, advocating with the lawmakers meetings happens. They had a flood, like either the night before them. I mean, literally, I'm driving to Sacramento, which is about an hour, and I'm getting a text message that said, or an email that says, change of plans. We have to go to a different location.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was kind of a bonkers day. Then here's this film crew following you around. And they didn't pan far enough over in the group picture to get me, unfortunately. I was on the end.
Yeah. You equate it to dementia. Things change and you can't control it.
Nope.
You can just ride with it. The that film, captured a lot of our journey day to day, but it also highlighted us being at the Capitol, advocating for change, advocating for getting bills funded for our local research centers and our addressing what caregivers need, in whole. I mean, it's this Alzheimer's disease is not just patient specific; it's family centric, and it's impacting my family. It wreaks havoc, and it doesn't stop. We don't play by our rules. We have to adapt to what dementia demands, and it is brutal. I don't like it. I hate Alzheimer's.
Yep.
But I've also been able to embrace this journey to forward and advance the need for us to talk about it. I want state lawmakers to understand that we are not a number. We are human. We are
Voters?
spouses. We are parents. We are siblings and offsprings of our loved one, and it's taking a toll, and it's going to impact our elder generation more than we kind of project right now. It's a hard road to do.
Yep.
And we talked about the medical professionals not being prepared. That also can be reflected to our communities.
Right.
Our communities are not prepared for this growing elder population that I believe it's either 1 in 9 and 1 in 10 that are going to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
I think it's higher than that.
Whatever it is, if it's higher, then
That's even worse.
that's even worse. But they're saying 63 every 63 seconds, one person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or related dementia.
Yep.
And the impact that it's going to have is going to be astronomical. I think it's going to be worse than COVID.
Oh, for sure.
And if COVID put a strain on our medical system, what's Alzheimer's going to do? And the related dementias. And we also focus on Alzheimer's, but there's related dementias that are just as significant and just as horrendous and horrid to the families. There's a lot of people that are struggling with that. And it's important that we shine light on this, that we highlight those people that need the support. They need the medical professionals to be educated enough to guide us through these journeys.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of convey disappointment, but from what we know, is Alzheimer's has been around since 1906, I think.
I know. Was it? I gotta channel my French that I took in school. Alios Alzheimer's, I think is how you pronounce his first name. He started studying Alzheimer's just over 100 years ago, like 102. So I'll let you do that math. I'm not good at math.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time. And we haven't made significant breakthroughs to find a treatment or some type of intervention that can reduce the burdens. I think it's been within the last 4 or 5 years that we've been making some headway in trying to find some treatments that may slow this down. But it's just not just medications. It's also the interactions with, the person, and I think I can speak for myself is that I've introduced a lot of these therapies with my dad, and it may be working, but there's no real measurement to gauge how well it's working.
Yeah, you don't have like a twin that you can compare. Like, we didn't do these therapies with the twin, but we did them with dad, and now we can see the outcome. Yeah, no, that's tricky. In any of your conversations, have you ever talked to anybody? Because I know back when we were kids, they did not talk about cancer. That was like the big C. Didn't talk about, and we were there with Alzheimer's and other dementias, and we're getting out of that. It's not quite as a stigma as it was before. And people like you and me and the guest I recorded with yesterday are helping that. She actually took her dad out and did things with him. And she just let everybody know. They go to his like favorite cafe. My dad has Alzheimer's. And there could be a line and they'd be like, oh, nope, here's your favorite table waiting for you. They knew his favorite foods. They interacted with, I'm like, that's like what we need. Because Alzheimer's, especially in California, tremendously affects society. And if you don't think it affects you, well, you're probably not listening to this podcast. But it affects employers and organization. It affects every segment of society. We just aren't aware of it yet. And you probably know, but for the listeners who haven't heard me say this, Alzheimer's disease is the #2 cause of death in California, which is higher than cancers. I think heart disease is the main cause. I'd have to look it up. I don't intend to be in any of those groups, but so I just know we were at like 4 and 5. It's 5 nationwide. California's always got to go big. So we got to be number two.
But we also have the largest elder population in the
Mhm.
country.
And the higher, I don't like the term marginalized communities, but we have a higher community, older communities in the Black population and the Hispanic population, and we know they have a higher risk of the disease than the white population. And oh my God, it's just too. I'm going to come over and do
So
art with your dad. I like art better than all these numbers.
yeah, uh, you know the it you can go down a rabbit hole and be astonished by the numbers. And and then you look at my dad and say, what are we doing right or wrong? Sometimes I do feel like I'm doing some things wrong. Uh, but then I have to challenge myself and do better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't do everything right as a parent.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going through parenting right now, although she's 28 years old, but this has put a strain on my relationship with my daughter, and many family members.
Yep.
But we still have a continued focus on my dad. My dad is a priority, and this is how we take care of our dad. And it's a care plan that's flexible, adaptable. Tomorrow might be a different story. We might have to change up our planning and how we go about it. But for today, this is what works. And we go with what works because that's what dementia is demanding right now. Um, we're rethinking it, we're reframing it, and we're reimagining how we can care for people living with Alzheimer's.
Yep.
I don't want to put my dad in a care home because I think that uh, would bring him down. It would be depressing. I don't think he would thrive as well as he's doing right now.
That's probably true. What I've seen of your dad, the memory community was a godsend for my mom. She had friends that understood her, people that didn't roll their eyes when she started doing her repetitive story again. Although one of her good friends, the first time I was with them when my mom launched into her repetitive story, slapped her knee and said, "You've told me that story 803 times." And I thought, that's a very specific number. And about 6 weeks later, my mom launched into the repetitive story again. And there was always a very defining clue. She would take a deep breath. I've had dogs all my life. Wow, geez, there's that story again. I learned as soon as I heard the deep breath, I knew as soon as she finishes that first sentence, we're going to deflect. And I would ask her about the dogs or whatever. But 6 weeks after the "you've told me 803 times," which apparently was true because 6 weeks later, her friend was repeating the story. And I thought, oh my God, you have Alzheimer's and you can remember this lady's repetitive story about as well as she is. Oh, this is like elder abuse. Hello? Is anybody seeing this as a problem? It was so wild. But my mom liked to sit around and basically shoot the breeze. And I struggled to do that. I could do it a lot better now. I've done this show 5 years. I did it for 3 years while she was around. Excuse me, 2 years. 8, 17, 18, 19, no, three. Well, 2.5. I said I can't do math. And so I've done it longer since she's been gone. And I've always learning new things and new things I could have tried. And so it's like, man, really wish I'd started this show earlier. But people are more willing to talk about it, which is why I brought you back to talk about the film. Is there?
It, there's always something you can learn about this.
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
that's why I'm in caregiver support groups because not only are they supportive, they're encouraging me to keep on this path. Um, trying to get my dad into the shower and cheering me on when I do get him into the shower or achieve some of these small wins. Uh, you know, I, it's if you're not a caregiver, you're not going to understand what we're going through.
But people need to learn how to understand it so that they can participate, like the people at the So if all works out the way it's supposed to, and I'm probably going to rearrange the order of these episodes, but the Finding Joy in Dementia recording that I did yesterday, she would take her dad to Home Depot and Target, and she just taught the staff, the other shoppers, like, this is what Alzheimer's looks like. This is how you deal with it. I mean, she was very open and just educational in, I'm bringing my dad as much joy. I'm deriving as much joy as possible. And I think it makes it a lot easier. I mean, if you've got somebody that's acting very strange and you're not really sure what's going on, you're a little tense and you're a little closed off, and they sense that. And now you may have, just by existing, everybody's just existing. Now you maybe caused a scenario that could go negative. So that's, I always joke, I'm the fun one at the party that ends up talking about Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I think we need to normalize it.
Mm-hmm.
Normalize that people are having these cognitive impairments, and that's okay. It's okay to forget where you put your wallet. It's okay that you can't remember my name. It's okay that you're repeating the story over again that I've heard for 803 times. But I, when I started hearing those stories over and over again, my dad talked about the Navy. I'll engage with him and say, tell me more. Tell me about this part. And there's been times where that story has a branch, and it's something I've never heard before, and it evolves, and I get to learn a little bit more about my dad. And that is special.
Mm-hmm.
It really shows that there is connection. Something somewhere is working, and it just took a question about, tell me more about that. Tell me why it felt so good to be out in the ocean, or how did it feel to be talking to your grandmother in the movie theater when she didn't understand the English language, or the day that my mom and dad were married, and an incident happened, and my dad can kind of recite that, recall that, reminisce about it, and have some joy about it.
Yeah, that's what I missed with my mom. Her repetitive story was almost verbatim every time. But I did learn to ask her as soon as she got through the first sentence, I've had dogs all my life. Oh, you have? What were their names? Or they had one. So I grew up with black miniature poodles. Now I've had golden retrievers for 30 some odd years. One of whom's driving me a little bananas at the moment. And one of them could go to any new location and sniff out a ball. They went to a friend's house. They'd never been to this house before. The dog had never been there before. It wasn't in their neighborhood. So, like, there's no way the dog was familiar with anything. They let him out in the backyard because dog, and he dove into their pond and came up with a tennis ball. They didn't even know there was a tennis ball in there. So, how he found this ball, so I would try to get her to talk about those stories, but she was probably further along when I was caring for her than your dad is now. And we all know the disease affects people differently. So I never really got news stories. I would just get weird answers. Like when I asked him what the names were, she told me, well, the first one was named Misty. The last one was named Misty. And we like that name so much that we named them all Misty. And I'm like, oh, really? Imp and Pierre were also named Misty. It's just like, but at least I didn't have to hear. So for anybody who hasn't heard me tell this story, when my mother was pregnant with me, my paternal grandmother said, well, now that you're expecting a baby, you'll be getting rid of the dogs, right? That apparently pissed off my mother. She remembered that to the end of her life. And she repeated it in front of my grandmother. That was embarrassing. And
Yeah,
I tell it a lot.
yeah, it's amazing that they can tap into the memory banks in different parts of their journey. I asked my dad about Elsie the cow because that was a comforting story for him. but he doesn't recall it anymore.
Hmm.
He knows there was a cow. He may guess that it was in a different town. Um, but it's coming up to the point where he's saying, I don't remember that anymore.
Mm. That's hard.
But yeah, but I don't let that get him down. I will say, well, I don't remember my first phone number or something like that. I will try to equate him and and show him that I have deficiencies too. Like my abilities are not as sharp, and he'll say to me, "Oh, just wait until you get to my age." And I'll repeatedly respond by telling him, "You shut up." Because if you're saying that you're old, that means that I'm getting old and that I'm going to start, not remembering too. And then he'll start chuckling and laughing. He's like, I got you, and, it's like, but we play on those words where it makes him feel comfortable. It makes him feel that, we are part of the same journey. One thing that I've tried to start adapting with my dad is to get him to do an exercise or an activity. Uh, I will say, hey, this is going to help us prevent from us getting Alzheimer's. So it's manipulative, but
You're
it
tapping
works.
into him wanting to be a help.
Yeah. Well, I'm tapping into him being the care partner for me. So he can take care of his son. He's still being the parent, looking after his son so we don't get Alzheimer's. And it works. It works because I'm not saying, hey, you have Alzheimer's, you need to do this. And it takes the brunt off of it because, yeah, he may be suffering or having these challenges, but we twist it a little bit and get him engaged in actively participating in his health. So it's a strategy. Is it working? I think so. Are we having some results? Maybe. Are we having fun with it? Of course, we're going to have fun with it. I mean, we're going to laugh, we're going to joke, and we're going to humiliate ourselves in the process. But I'd rather him laugh and call me out on certain things and be content and stable than him being stressed, have high anxiety, worry, and fear that something's wrong with him.
That makes sense. And that came across in the movie is that he just seems to be living a very content life, making all kinds of art with his Sharpies. I forgot, was the camera crew at the art gallery opening? There's a lot of
No, they
people
were
though.
not.
Okay. I remember there's a lot of people. I didn't remember if the camera crew was there. Um, that was a missed opportunity.
Well, they had already started on their final drafts at that
Ah,
point. I invited them, and they pretty much just said that they had, that was out of their schedule because they had working on other projects, and
well,
you know, the,
the amount of time that they spent with you and the other two families, and then to literally edit this film, this documentary down to like, what was it, like actually 60 minutes, or it was not
it was
more than,
50. It was 50. Well, the time is 54 minutes.
yeah.
You know,
I
that's
know
a
my,
lot. That's a lot of information. A lot of content went into that. I mean, there is a lot of information in that film,
yep.
and it really portrayed a lot of the things that are very similar with each of the families. Like I can identify with uh, Andrea's mom and Janice's wife, and I can understand their challenges that they're facing. I mean, they're facing these really tough obstacles that are a burden, and It's very common to have these similarities. We may go about it differently. We may insult the integrity of our loved ones, but we also have resilience to come back and try again in a different manner that gives our loved ones some confidence. And my dad, I think he thrives with feeling confident about certain things. And when he's not feeling confident, that's when we have some other behavioral challenges that take time to deflect and redirect and encourage him with his abilities to do what he does the best right now. And that's, enjoying music, dancing, laughing, drawing, and enjoying the beauty of nature. We go for walks, and my dad's just observant, attuned with himself, and relevant in his own footing. I'm literally the guy would challenge himself every day and be engaged with these activities that makes me feel good.
Yeah. No, it's
Makes me
obvious
feel
that you're
good.
doing a good job.
I'm trying to do a good job with him. Now, trying to do good with me is a different story. But
Well, I can hold you accountable to that.
yeah, thanks.
Because one of the participants in my support group, her husband's been gone almost a year, and she started 2025 with the goal that she was going to catch up on her own healthcare needs. Now she's a little bit older than us. She's almost 82. So, we have a little bit of wiggle room than somebody that's her age, but maybe not a lot. I have one last question, and then I better let you go. Do the 803 things I'm sure you need to do today. Did you get to meet Andrea or Janice?
No, I know Andrea from social media. She's out there putting herself on Instagram, talking about her journey. Um, Janice, I just recently connected through social media and via text. We'll share information and kind of encourage each other to go forward. Um, but we really haven't met in person, and I'm pretty sure that will come one of these days. We'll be all in the same room together and sharing our journey.
And
Uh,
your documentary fame.
yeah, one thing about the documentary itself, it reminded me of a caregiver support group, 3 caregivers sitting in a room and just sharing our experience.
I can see that. I think that as a facilitator, I can see that because everybody had the same diagnosis, different people they were caring for, and different struggles. And that's why we're going to also have Janice on in a couple some weeks. I have to look at my schedule.
Yeah.
But you can find the film. It's linked in the show notes. It's on pbs.com, I believe, but don't take my word for it. I will make sure it's linked so you guys can go see it because it is beautiful and it is less than an hour. So it's not a huge time commitment. And you get to see Carlos and other Carlos' dad and the other 4 ladies that are part of the film.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, it's just very visually interesting. And you don't come away with like ugh, that was heavy. That's what I liked. That's a testament to the film crew, the storytellers, and the editors. That it was very enlightening in a kind of like a bird on a perch, kind of watching, going, oh yeah, ooh, that's tough to deal with. Glad my mom didn't do any of those things, or geez, I wish my mom had been happier, like Carlos's dad. Just it helps. It helps to see the different journeys. So I appreciate that you were the first guest to come on and talk about the film. This is Carlos's second episode. Like I said, I'll link his first one in the show notes for you guys to catch up on. That one's on dealing with grief when your loved one doesn't remember somebody's past. And do you have any last words of wisdom for the listeners, Carlos?
Words of wisdom. Wow. There's one thing that reflecting on the film that I didn't know about my dad. We were on the tandem bicycle. You know, I'd always feel my dad, seemed like he was restless behind me. I couldn't turn back and look at him and see how he's doing. I could verbally talk to him and ask him what's going on. And it's all my hips hurting or, my knee is bothering me. But, I'd always feel the bike shake, I was fearing that, okay, we're going to have a fall and it's going to be bad.
That's because you're not wearing helmets. I had a serious crash and cracked my helmet all the way through. Just a word of warning.
Yeah, at a high speed of 3 miles per hour.
I was going like 20.
Yeah. Um, but in the film, what what happened is they captured my dad standing up on the pedals.
Oh,
And I didn't know that. I didn't know that my dad got up on the pedals with his big smile, enjoying that wind on his face, charging with me. And we were doing it together.
that's cool.
And it's super hard to get in sync and ride together. My dad had to surrender to me being the leader and navigating the bicycle. And I had to trust my dad is going to stay in his seat and hold on to those handlebars and not complain too much about not knowing where to go or how to turn the bicycle. Sometimes we have to let things be, go with it, and ride off into the sunset. As hard as it can be, it's one of those challenges that we face. Some of us do it involuntary. Some of us are kind of thrown into the fire,
Yeah.
but we do it for love. We
Yep.
do it because it means something more than just my parent. It's someone that I've had attachment to for all my life, and I don't want to see him be scared. I want to walk him home in the comfort, in the moment, full of compassion and love. It's hard. It's hard to convey in words what this means. I know that if he can say, I'm grateful that my two sons are taking care of me, and I've done a good job that day.
I think the smile on his face should communicate that, even if he doesn't use those words.
Yeah. And that's what I think that if we can find that connection with our loved ones and understand that they're okay, they'll be fine.
Well, that's a great place to end, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to encourage again everybody go watch the film because it is really beautiful, educational, and it's just special. That's not really the right word, but that's the only one I can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, I am obsessed with seeing my dad up on screen. And that really brings me joy because I get to see him in a different light. It's not me holding my phone and highlighting him on social media. It's us interacting together, us playing and taking on the world. Alzheimer's can be devastating, but we can also make it as enjoyable as we can. And kind of a oxymoron, but we are moving forward. We're growing with it. I have to grow with it. I have to navigate it, and I have to be there as a supporting member of my dad's life.
Well, I'm glad they got to document a big chunk of it for you. Thank you.
Mhm.